Okay, there are two parts to the Shir. Part number one is going to be more the proofs to what the Shir should be, what the Shir is. Try to explain the different opinions. And then the second part, we'll see how much we'll be able to get to tonight before you guys, we'll see who falls first, you or me. We'll be taking what we get out of the Shiurim and make it into practical terms. All right, now the first thing that we want to clarify is basically everybody knows that there's a famous argument between what's called the Chazon Ish and Reb Chaim No, which we'll see and we'll explain. It really didn't start at the Chazon Ish and Reb Chaim No. What the size of the egg is. In order to understand that, we're going to start with the Gemara in Pesachim. The Gemara in Pesachim Daf Kuftes. It tells us very clearly what the Shir of a mikveh is, and according to that, we will understand what the Shir of an egg is. The Gemara says like this. The Gemara says, the Gemara in Pesachim Daf Kuftes Amar Aleph. Amar Rav Chizda. Revi'is shel Torah etzba'ayim al etzba'ayim beroim etzba'ayim v'chatzi etzba v'choimish etzba. The Gemara says, what is the size of a mikveh? The Gemara says it's 2 fingers by 2 fingers by 2. The way the Gemara has it, they didn't have decimal points and they didn't have any way of explaining fractions. So the way they explained the fraction was a half of an etzba and a fifth of an etzba. For those of you that don't know math, a half of an etzba and a fifth of an etzba is 0.5 and 0.2, which means 2.7. Which obviously means that obviously it's 2 times 2 times 2.7. That is what is the size of a revi'is is. That's what the Gemara says. That's a revi'is. Now, how did the Gemara get to that? What is it based on? I have here over here, if anybody wants, I have the calculations. We'll make copies of it afterwards. But it works like this. If you have we know what the size of a mikveh is. And the size of a mikveh is 3 amos by 1 amma by 1 amma. Everybody agrees to that. That is the size of a mikveh. The Gemara says that's the size of the water that a person can cover his whole body. Arba'im sa. Arba'im sa is 3 amos by 1 amma by 1 amma. What is the size of an amma? That's going to be part of the problem. We don't know what the size of the amma was. But in the meantime, how the Gemara got to their equation. So, if an amma is 24 etzba'os. How do we get to that? Because there are 6 tfachim, basically. I'm not going into all the different Gemaras and everything, but basically there are 6 tfachim in an amma. A tefach, 6 tfachim in an amma, and there are 4 etzba'os in a tefach. When we say we talk about an etzba, here we're talking about the thumb. So there are 4 thumbs in a tefach and 6 tfachim in an amma. That's not so difficult mathematics. 6 times 4 is 24 etzba'os in an amma. So, memela, if we're talking about 3 amos by 1 amma by 1 amma, so we're basically talking about 72 24 times 3 is 72. 72 by 24 etzbais by 24 etzbais. Going to get a little bit complicated, but keep your what do we say to your Gemara cup open. So 24, and for those of us that don't believe me, just open up your calculators now, and 24 times 72 times 24, that's the amount of fingers. It comes out to 41,472 square fingers. When you're talking about space, 41,472 square fingers. Now, I know that sounds like a very big number, but it's going to be, you're going to see how the Gemara came to their equation in a minute. When the Gemara says a revius is 2 times 2 times 2.7, how did the Gemara get to that? So let's go back a step. How much is a revius? A revius is a revius of what? A quarter of what? It's a quarter of a log. What is a log? There are 6 eggs in a log. So if a revius is a log, that means obviously that a revius is an egg and a half. Okay, that's very simple mathematics. So if 6 divided by 4 is 1.5. So since there are 6 eggs in a log, so a revius is basically 1.5 eggs. Now, how many eggs are there in a mikveh? Very simple. Since we know that there are, again, there are 6 eggs in a log. There are 4 lugim in a kav, and 6 kabin in a saw. So that means there are 24 eggs in a kav, and 24 times 6 eggs in a saw. And everybody knows that a mikveh is 40 saw. So it's basically 6 times 4 times 6 times 40. In other words, they still have their calculators open. So 5,760 eggs in a mikveh. Simple mathematics. So, what is the percentage of a revius to the whole mikveh? It's a revius. A revius is an egg and a half. So, since we said that there are 5,760 eggs in a mikveh, but how many revi'iyos are there, therefore, in a mikveh? Since a revius is 1.5 eggs, so the simple equation is 5,760 divided by 1.5. Right? 1.5, and now we'll know how many revi'iyos. So how many revi'iyos do we have in a mikveh? 3,840 revi'iyos in a mikveh. So, getting back, so we know we have 3,840 revi'iyos in a mikveh. So how many fingers is that going to be? So since we said that there are 41,472 square etzba'os in a mikveh, so we just do 41,472 divided by 3,840 revi'iyos. And we comes out to 10.8 square etzba'os. Very simple mathematics. If you take your calculators, everything I said, anybody wants, be able to go over the Shir. So, again, we said there are 41,472 square etzbois in a mikveh, how many revi'iyos are there? Therefore, in a mikveh divided by 3,140, and we get to 10.8 square etzbois. That is exactly 2 times 2 times 2.7 is 10.8. The Gemara said that what is the size of a mikveh? 2 times 2 times 2.7 fingers. That's how the Gemara got to that equation. That's 10.8 square etzbois in a revi'is. Again, a revi'is is 1 part 3,848 of a mikveh, and that is the size of a revi'is. Now we get a little bit complicated. I know I might have lost you guys already, but you'll see where we're headed. So now, the tzlach. The tzlach was also the Noide B'Yehuda. He wrote a sefer on Pesachim called the tzlach, and many Masechtas in Shas. And over there, he said he went ahead and he measured with fingers. He wanted to figure out what is the shiur of a mikveh. So he went ahead and did 2 fingers by 2 fingers by 2.7 fingers. And he says that he came out, let's turn it into metrics, just to make things simple, to 150 milliliters. 150 milliliters. Remember, all of the shiurim are volume. A revi'is is the size of volume. An egg is the size of volume. A sa is volume. Nothing to do with weight. It's all volume. Nobody argues on that. Not even Rabbi Tzak Yosef, if we'll get to him at the end of the shir. Right? All those shiurim are volume. It's like in today's time, liters, milliliters. All of those shiurim are shiurim in volume. So he says that he basically came out that the shir is 150 milliliters. Now, he went ahead and measured eggs. He measured the eggs, measured the standard eggs, and he said when he measured the eggs, since we know that a revi'is is 1.5 eggs, he measured, how do you measure the size of an egg? Very simple. You take a cup of water, you fill it up to the top with water. I left my scale. Maybe we'll get to it later. You fill it up, right? You fill it up with water, and you work with displacement. Anyway, if anybody wants to do the test by himself, you'll fill any cup up that has more than the size of, you fill it up to the top, fill it up to here. You put the egg in, and you'll see how much water will be displaced. Put it in gently, because you splash it, of course, more water will come out. You put water in, and you see how much water is. Now you take that water, and then you'll pour it back into the cup, and put the cup on the scale, and you'll see how much is the size of an egg. So he says he went ahead and he did that. And he said that the size of the eggs came out to half of when he measured with fingers. Noide B'Yehuda lived 200 years ago, more than 200 years ago. Right? He measured 2 fingers by 2 fingers by 2.7. And then he measured the eggs, and he says he came out that the eggs were half the size. So says the Noide B'Yehuda, I don't know. One of 2 things obviously could have happened. Either the fingers got bigger from the times of Chazal, or the eggs got smaller. One of 2 possibilities. But it's a major problem, and you will see at the end that, I don't know what we'll get to today, that it's a major problem. The fingers don't match the eggs. So we can either say one of 2 things. Either the eggs got smaller, or the fingers got bigger. Now, some people want to say that, how could you say that the fingers got bigger? Because we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, according to some midrashim, 10 amos tall. Famous story with Oig. He was 10 amos tall, he jumped 10 amos, he had a sword of 10 amos, and hit Oig's ankle. Famous medrash. No. So, and the people, would be a little bit, you would think that, we don't have Oig Melech HaBashan anymore. So it would be more of a reason to believe that maybe people got smaller. So, not bigger. That's what you might assume. People got bigger. People got smaller. If we see that the midrashim are talking about all these big types of people, so if anything, people got smaller. So if people didn't get bigger, rather smaller, so then you're left with one possibility: the eggs got smaller. The tzlach didn't really have a clear-cut maskana. Tzorach iyun. He remains at a tzorach iyun, but what do you have to do? So he said you have to be machmir, which would mean that you'd have to be machmir both ways. When the chumrah is the bigger shiur, because now the shiurim are basically in eggs when it comes to eating and everything. We'll talk about the kazayas, whatever we'll get to, right? We talk about the egg, right? If we're going to say that the egg is smaller than what it used to be, when you need to make Kiddush Friday night, you have to make it on a reviz. You need a kosher bracha. So you're going to need the bigger shiur, the 150 milliliter shiur. But when I tell you that, what you shouldn't, let's say you're talking about a bracha achroina, what should you do? Well, if you're going to say, I'm only going to make a me'ein shalosh, what the Ashkenazim call an ala michya, even though you drink wine, they'll call it an ala michya. But the me'ein shalosh on a cup of wine, you're not going to do when you have 75 milliliters. Maybe you only do when you have 150 milliliters. Because maybe I didn't have a shiur revius. But at the same time, don't drink 75 milliliters because maybe you did have a shiur revius. So you don't want to be in limbo. So you should always have to be machmir both ends. When the smaller shiur. Now, if we work the other way, if we want to figure out, now let's according to the tzlach, it seems from the tzlach that he was working basically since he came out. Let's say the standard, just for argument's sake, I don't know what we'll get to tonight, but again, let's say for argument's sake that the standard egg is 50 cc. It makes things much easier. We'll get to Rav Chaim Shir hopefully later, but let's just for argument's sake, it's very easy to work with a 50, it's very round. So we're saying egg is 50 cc, cubic centimeters. Cc means cubic centimeters, and that cubic centimeters means 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. That's what a cubic centimeter means. So if we're talking about 50 cc, 50 milliliters, it's the same thing. 50 milliliters and 50 cc are the same. So then, the egg is 50 cc. According to the bigger shiur, the egg is 100. And if we're working with that shiur, that means that basically the thumb is 2.4 centimeters. If we work the other way, if we work the smaller shiur with 50, then the finger becomes, again, because we don't know the size of the people. We don't have pictures. Besides Michelangelo making a picture of Moshe Rabbeinu, we don't really have pictures of the size of Moshe Rabbeinu. We don't have Moshe Rabbeinu's finger, right? We don't have fingers from the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? So we have to work backwards now. We have eggs. So if we say our eggs are 50 cc, and we know that a revius, as the Gemara said, is 2 times 2.2, that's the size of a revius, that's the size of an egg and a half. So we work backwards now. And now we work and we figure out, let's say we know what the size of an egg is. Let's say we're going to say that the size of an egg is 50 cc. So if the size of an egg is 50 cc, so an egg and a half is 75 cc. And now I work out how many, since I know that it has to be 10.8 square etzbois, right? The 75. So I do that by divided by the 10.8, and I'll know how big my finger is. So if you work with the smaller shear, it comes out, so since, as we said, it's 10.8 square etzbois. So if I divide, I know the reviz is 10.8 square etzbois. I divide my shear of my egg and a half, which is 75, by the 10.8, and I know the size of my finger. So what is the size of the finger? It comes out to 2 centimeters. So we basically don't know what the size of the eggs are and what the size of the fingers are. According to Reb Chaim Nah, that's the smaller shear, what's known as smaller shear, the finger would be 2 centimeters. The thickness, the width, whatever you call this, the width of the finger would be 2 centimeters. According to the bigger shear, it's 2.4 centimeters. If you know that the reviz is 75 cc, it's 75 square centimeters. It's square cubic centimeters. So now I want to turn it into metrics, right? So I know that my finger is 10.8. The size of the reviz is 10.8 square etzbois. But I don't know what the size, it's like X in algebra, right? But I don't know what the size of the etzba is. So if I know that 75 equals 10.8 equals 10.8x. So in algebra you learned what? If you want to figure out, if you know 75 equals 75 cubic centimeters, right, equals 10.8 square etzbois. So you divide 75 by 10 and you get x. X is, so now that is the size of 1 square etzba. And then, once you know the size of a square etzba, you do the square root of that, and then you know your size of your finger. So it comes out, again, according to the smaller shear, it's 2 centimeters the finger. According to the bigger shear, it's 2.4. The shear of an egg, according to the smaller shear, is, just for the meantime, we're working with 50. According to the Chazon Ish, it's 100 square centimeters. It's 100 milliliters. And the shear of V is, of course, accordingly 75 and 150. And that is the beginning of where everything starts. Now, again, as we said, the Reb Chaim, the Tzlach, who is the Chazon Ish, which everybody knows as the bigger shir called, always being called the Chazon Ish, is really being based on the Tzlach. Just the Tzlach ended off, I don't know. And the Chazon Ish basically said you have to be Machmir. It's a Deoraisa. If it's Deoraisa for sure, you have to be Machmir, right? To the bigger shir. Now, that's all based on just the Gemara. The Gemara said what the shear of the mikveh is in fingers, and we know that that is parallel to the size of an egg, and a revi is an egg and a half. But we do have, so if we just stop there, okay, we'd have to be machmir. What should we do? But we do have the Rishonim, we have the Rambam. Now the Rambam tells us the Shir. The Rambam worked very hard in telling us the Shir, And we'll see the Rambam in a few places gave us what this Shir is. And then, of course, the Rambam didn't tell us what the size of a finger is, but he told us what is the Shir of a Revi'is. We're going to see, he tells us what the Shir of Shir Chala is. And now our job is, since we have, and even the Chazon Ish says in one place, if we would have a clear-cut Hora'ah from the Rishonim would be telling us what the Shir is, we would have to do according to what the Rishonim tell us. So let's now go into what the Rambam told us, and we'll see what that translates into our Shiurim. So number one, the Rambam will start with the Rambam in Eduyos. Pirush HaMishnayos or Rambam, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Beis. The Rambam tells us Ukvar bi'arnu, I'm not going to read the whole thing if anybody wants to look it up. And he says like this: Va'ani asisi mida b'tachlis. It wasn't just us in our generation that we've tried to figure things out as practical as it could be. The Rambam already tried to do it, and he did. Did it. Mashi yocholti min adiktuk. He says, I did my best. Rambam is writing. Mashi yocholti min adiktuk. He was medaktek. Umatzasi haravias haniskeres b'chol ha'Torah. Tachil min hayayin karov chafav kisofim. It's 24 coins. Hanikra dirham. Ba'aravi. Umin hamayim karov lechav zayin dirham. So the Rambam tells us what the Shir of a Revi'is is. 27 dirham in water, 26 dirham in wine. Now again, don't get confused. You can put, this is our cup. Let's just say for argument's sake, this is 180. Right? So you can put in here water, you can put in here wine. All the Shiurim of the Torah are volume. Revi'is is volume. Remember, we said the Shir is volume. So you put in here water, and I'm going to put it on the scale. How much will it weigh? Water. It's one of the unbelievable things of metrics, you guys that are still stuck on your American Shiurim, whatever your measurements. You'll learn metrics. It's much easier. 180 milliliters of water will be also 180 cc, cubic centimeters. Beautiful. Very simple, not confusing. What? Grams, yeah. So it's 180 grams. You put it on the scale, it'll weigh 180. What's the volume? 180. But if you fill this in with gold, Emir Hashem, you should all be zoicha to have that much gold, right? You put gold in here, it's going to weigh a lot more. It's the same volume, but it's going to weigh who knows how much more. Gold is a very, very heavy metal, one of the heaviest metals that there are around, right? You put wine in it, it'll weigh less than water. That's what the Rambam tells me. He tells us that when you put water in it, it's going to weigh 27 dirham. You'll put wine, it'll weigh 26. Wine weighs less than water. Why? As a Kadosh Baruch Hu, not me. Right? But that's what he tells us. Uminachita karov le'echad ve'esrim dirham. When you want to put in wheat, put wheat in the same thing, wheat weighs less. Everybody knows, the one thing that you don't want to lug home are drinks. Drinks are the heaviest thing that you bring home from the supermarket. Drinks are very heavy. In other words, in the same size. So if you want to put wheat in the same area of a revius, he says it's going to weigh 21. Umikemach achita kigoin shmoina asar dirham. Says 18 dirham. Telling you flour weighs 50% less than water. Flour is very light. In other words, the same thing that weighed 27 dirham of water, you'll fill the same area up. Just let's say this would be a revius. If this would be a revius, you fill it up with water, it's going to weigh 27 dirham. You put flour in it, it's only going to weigh 18 dirham. And he goes on one more. Umatzasi shiur chala ba'oisa hamida chamesh me'ois ve'esim dirham bikorav mikemach chitim. Tells me one more last thing that he weighed. And he tells us the shiur chala is 520 dirham. 520 dirham. Why is that? Again, you can take out your calculators. And we know that what is the shiur chala? Ve'omer asiri soifa hu. Pasuk in the Torah. Omer is asiri soifa. And efa is 3 sa. So memela, what is the shiur of challah? So, how many eggs are there in an ephah? So we already told you before, you explained that there are 6 eggs in a log, 4 lugim in a kav, 6 kav in a sa, and 3 sa in an ephah. Before we did it, we're trying to figure out how much is in arba'im sa, but in an ephah, so it's very simple. 6 times 4 times 6 times 3 is 432. So ha'omer asir sa'ephah, that's the shiur of challah. 43.2 eggs is the shiur of challah. And the Rambam tells me how much is that in dirhamim. So he tells me how much is that in dirhamim? 520 dirhamim. You're going to put your flour on the scale. You put the flour on the scale, 520, the way they used to do it. You'd have, what do you call those? A scale. A scale, which I tell you, that was the real scale, right? So you put your 520 dirhamim here, and you put your challah here. When it weighs the same, now you know you got the shiur challah. That's the Rambam. It's still 520 dirhamim. That's the shiur of challah. Okay, what does that do for us? Well, now we're stuck a little bit because what is the shiur of a dirham? So basically, I know what the shiur of challah is. The Rambam tells me what is the shiur of a revius. A revius is an egg and a half. So as long as I know, so basically what is he telling me? He's telling me that the shiur of an egg is 18 dirhamim. That's the size of an egg. A revius and a half is 27. Right? An egg and a half is 27 dirham. That means the size of an egg is 18 dirhamim. But I need to know how much a dirham is. How much is a dirham? What is the size? How much does a dirham weigh? Once I know how much a dirham weigh, I got everything figured out. I don't have to, I'm finished. I can put everything else.
We have so many data points. Can we also just figure out based on the relative weight of each one?
Again?
We know how much a certain amount of water would weigh, and wine would weigh, and flour would weigh, and wheat would weigh. At some point, you don't need.
No, but he's telling you water weighs, let's say Revi'is is 27 dirhamim, but I don't know how much dirham is. I still don't know.
But I know that the percentage of the weight of water relative to wine.
Okay, so what is that going to do you?
So I can then.
But I don't know what the Shir of Revi'is is. Maybe Revi'is is this big. Maybe it's this big. I don't know what it is. I don't know. How big is it?
No, based on the percentage of the difference in weight, one is only going from 27 to 28 or 27 to 26.
27 to 26.
Right, so
It doesn't help me.
how much?
But I still don't know what the Shir of I don't know what the dirham is. Maybe a dirham weighs 10 grams. Let's say, just for argument's sake. So that means that if theoretically, if a dirham would weigh 10 grams, that means it's 10 times. No, if a dirham weighs, I know that 18, so 18 times 10, right? 18, if each dirham is 10, and it's 10 grams, so it's 180.
But I know, talking.
Okay. So again, the Rambam gave us clear-cut shiurim, but we still don't know how much is the dirham. But we do know that the Rambam wrote the shiur 520 dirhamim. The Shulchan Aruch, for those of us that don't know history, the Rambam passed away in the year 1204. The Shulchan Aruch, printed in the year 1570, circa, right, around 1570. The Shulchan Aruch writes the Shir Chal, the same thing, 520 dirham. And all of the Sfardi poskim, the Ashkenazi poskim didn't work with dirhamim because they didn't live in these Arabic countries. They didn't have dirhamim. They used other measurements, but all the Sfardi poskim used the Shir generation after generation for the Shir of Challah, and also for the Shir of Revi'is and an egg. Now, how much is the dirham? How much is the dirham? So the dirham of when Reb Chaim Noah was around, just 75 years ago around, what he was using, the dirham weighed 3.2 grams. That would mean, that's the famous Shir of Reb Chaim Noah. So since I know that there are 27 dirhamim in a Revi'is, that means that the Shir of a Revi'is is 86.4 milliliters. 27 times 3.2 is 86.4. Those of you that love gematrias, kois is 86. Right? So, Reb Chaim Noah said, well, pretty much, what more do you want? What more? We have dirhamim, we have the Shir of the Rambam. We don't have to be machmir more than that, right? We know what the Shir is. The Rambam told us the Shir, and we know what the Shir is. So comes the Chazon Ish, and the Chazon Ish says, I'm sorry, my dear Reb Chaim Noah, but how do you know that the dirhamim of the Rambam were the same as the dirhamim that you have 75 years ago? The Rambam lived 800 years ago. How do you know what the size of the dirhamim were? Maybe the dirhamim of the Rambam weighed double. Maybe it weighed 5, 6, 7. Who knows what it weighed? How do you know what it weighed? Okay, we'll put that on the side burner. The dirhamim, for a minute. We'll put it on the side. Now, the Rambam, we have another Rambam. The Rambam, this is a Rambam in Bikurim, Perek Vav, Halacha Tezvav. The Rambam in Bikurim Perek Vav, Halacha Tezvov. Kamu Shir Isa Shechayeves B'chala. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Again, he repeats the Gemara, V'aravias, Etzba'im, Etzba'im, Boroim, Etzba'im, V'chatzi Etzba, V'chomish Etzba. V'chol Etzba'im, Roichav, Goydel Shel Yad. Goydel means the Agudal. Nimtzei Slomit, Sha'amida Sheyesh Ba Eser Etzbois, Al Eser Etzbois, Boroim Shalosh Etzbois, Uchia Etzba, Bikiru V'ua Oimer. It says 10, basically what we said. It's 10.8 square etzbois. Okay. V'kama mechila midazo k'moi shalosh v'arbaim beitzim beinunis v'chomish beitza. 43.2 eggs. V'heim mishkal shisho shmoinim sloim u'shnei shlishi sela mikemach achitim shebemitzrayim. Sheheim mishkal chamesh mois zuz ve'esrim zuz mizuzei Mitzrayim. Says again, chamesh mois ve'esrim 520 mizuzei Mitzrayim. 520 dirhamim. Umida shemichil ki mishkal hazeh mikemach achitin hazeh ba moididim lechala b'chol mokom. The Rambam again tells us that this is the Shir of, again he tells that's the Shir of Chala. And here he goes out and he says everything again. Now, the Rambam also in the Rambam in Eruvin, right? The Rambam in Hilchos Eruvin, Perek Aleph, Halacha Yud Beis. I'm going to just make things simpler. He says, Va'asela arba dinorim. A sela is 4 dinar. Va'ravius machzekes min hamayim oy min hayayin mishkal shiva asar dinorim v'chetzi dinar. Now the Rambam tells us, forget about the dirhamim. Now he tells us the shiur in dinarim. Va'asela arba dinim va'ravius machzekes min hamayim o min hayayin mishkal shiva asar dinorim v'chetzi dinar bikiruv. He says, what is the Shir of a Revi'is? Around Bikiruv, not everything works out exact. Said it's close to being 17 and a half dinar of the Torah. 17 and a half dinar of the Torah. So now we know that what is the ratio of the dinarim to the dirhamim? Very simple. Also, again, mathematics. The ratio is 17 and a half to 27, right? So, which basically means that if, again, what is the dinar of the Torah? The dinar of the Torah is basically, the dinar is a shekel. Shekel, sela, right? So you have, that's the shiur of dinarim. So we have the ratio. So not only, if we're going to say that dirhamim changed, we're also going to have to say that the dinarim changed. Right? Well, nothing changed. We don't have dinarim today. Whatever the shiur of dinarim. Now, the Rambam also tells us over here, what is, this might seem a little bit difficult for you guys to chap, but he also tells me that the Shir, he also gives us the Shir in Se'oros. I want to take the grain of this chita se'ora. Take a grain of se'ora. So how many? V'adinur sheish ma'im. V'ama mishka shesh esrei se'oros. You told me how much do. So now you're not going to make a mistake, right? V'adinur sheish ma. V'ama mishka shesh esrei se'oros. He tells you basically that a ma is 16 se'oros, and 16 times 6 is a dinar. So I know now that it weighs 96 se'oros. A dinar weighs 96 se'oros. V'asel arba dinarim. Right? So it's pretty simple now. So now we have to know how much did a dinar weigh, how much did a dirham weigh. Now, we have dirhamim from the time of the Rambam. This the Chazon Ish didn't have. Maybe, I don't think he knew about this. But we have the dirhamim from the time of the Rambam. Like, all these type of things they find in excavations and they find. So we have dirhamim from the time of the Rambam. Now, I left out one point before. The Chazon Ish had a problem. If the Shulchan Aruch wrote the same Shir as the Rambam wrote 520 dirhamim, and the Shulchan Aruch copied it, what does that tell you? That it didn't change. Because if it didn't change, the Shulchan Aruch would have to change. Why did he leave it at 520 dirhamim? And he didn't write the 520 dirhamim of the Rambam, he wrote 520 dirhamim. And to top it off, all the Sephardi poskim, starting from the Shulchan Aruch down, continued to copy it until the time of the 20th century. They all copied the same Shir. So, what would that tell you? They didn't change. Otherwise, why didn't the Sephardi poskim change? So the Chazon Ish says, well, maybe the Sephardi poskim messed up, and the dirhamim at some point changed, and they didn't realize, and they kept copying. Now, that's a very harsh statement to say about all the Sephardi poskim, because just tell them I'm saying Shir. So the Sephardi poskim, big names. We're not going to go through a whole list. All the Gdolei Sephardi poskim copied the Shir, copied that same Shir, and they didn't say anything about that the dirhamim changed. But from the dirhamim that we have from the time of the Rambam, the Chazon Ish was right. The dirhamim did change. There was only one mistake. They got smaller. They were smaller than the time of Reb Chaim Noah. Not that they were bigger and got smaller. In other words, in order for the Chazon Ish to be right, the dirhamim would have to be something like 5.5 or 6.5, between 5.5 and 6 grams, in order for it to match his Shir. And the dirhamim that we have from the time of the Rambam are between 2.8 and 3. Smaller than the Shir of Reb Chaim Noah, 3.2.
Maybe they wore out.
What?
Maybe they wore out.
No. It doesn't. They're gold.
Even when coins are in circulation, they put notches on them to know when they would be too small. Saying so if they sat for 800 years.
Nothing happens to gold. It doesn't get smaller. Nobody ever brought that up. Now, you could say, well, I don't know what you're going to say about that. I mean, they're going to ask me, why did the Sephardi poskim continue? If the dirhamim did change, why did they continue using it? That's not such a question, because it got a little bit bigger. It's no big deal. You'll eat a little bit more. What will happen to you? But if it would get small, if it was bigger and it got smaller, and they're giving you a smaller shear, so making you saying a bracha levatala, bracha achroina, the endless amount of things. They're telling you to eat less when we talk about what the kazayas is and everything else. That would be horrific. I got a little bit bigger, so you need to drop more. You're not talking about a very big difference. 3.2 to 3, right? Not such a big difference. But we'll put the dirhamim aside. But what about the dinarim, right? What about the dinarim? We have thousands of dinarim. And they all match the smaller shir, not the bigger shir, right? So basically, the ratio of the dinarim to the dirhamim are matching. To the dirhamim that we're saying, the smaller shir. And the sa'oros, the Rambam also told us the shir in sa'oros. So now let's go weigh sa'ora, right? And that'll also prove. I'll weigh. The Rambam tells me that the shir of, again, he says sheish esrei sa'oros is a ma, and obviously one statue, 96 is the dinar. I'll know how much the dinar weighs. Take your sa'oros, weigh 96 sa'oros, and now you know the weight of a dinar. Very simple. But we can also stay on that. Maybe sa'oros were also heavier. And they were also double the size. But we have a little bit problem with that. Because the Rambam tells me the width of the sa'oros. And he tells me that have to match, right? He tells us the width of the sa'oros, and that also has to match the same size of the fingers and everything else. So the only way to say, so since it can't be that they were wider, because if they were wider, then it would make everything else wouldn't work. He tells me the shir of sa'oros in the width. So the only thing you'd have to say that something very weird happened, that the same sa'ora with the same width weighed double. Not that it got smaller, it weighed double. Or maybe I'm going to say it was much longer, right? It was this way longer. A little bit weird to have to say that. And then also the Rambam gives us this same shir in charuvim. He matches it to charuvim, the pit of a charuv. Charuv is a carob. And you're going to have to say the same thing, that the carob seeds also weigh double. Or at least it got, and everything miraculously became exactly double. Was exactly double, and everything miraculously became smaller, exactly half. And the carob changed to half, and it changed to the same half as the chita, as the soira, right? And also dinarim became half. Everything changed to half. It's a little bit weird, right? The Chazon Ish had another problem, because there was a Mesorah to the Shir of Pidyon Ben. How? We know the Shir of Pidyon Ben is also 5 shekel. Right? 5 shekel is 5 selah. Right? Which is 20 dinarim. So when people used to go ahead and they went to the Kohen, right? They had to give him 20 dinarim of silver, the value, right, of how much it was. And there was a minhag to it. And the biggest shir was 96 grams. I'm translating everything to make it simpler. 96 grams. That was the biggest shir. According to the Chazon Ish, the shir of Pidyon Ben would have to be 170 grams. Because 17.5 dinar weighs 150. So 20 dinarim are going to weigh 170. Simple mathematics. Ratio, 17.5 to 20 as 150 is to 170. It's going to have to weigh 170. Nobody ever had a minhag of giving 170 grams of silver for Pidyon Ben. So the Chazon Ish was stuck. And at one point, he even writes, people asked him what to do, and he basically was saying, I don't really, I can't give a psak, because really the minhag was not like that. And then at one point, he was saying, oh, yeah, maybe you should be machmir and do 107, and then he changed. And he said something very mechudishdik. He said that maybe the shir of Pidyon Aben was given in Sa'iros. Because the Rishonim tell us how much a pruta is and how many Sa'iros it is. And that's what the Rambam copied the same thing. It's the Rishonim in the beginning of Kiddushin talk about it. So maybe the shir was given in Sa'iros. So if the shir was given in Sa'iros, if the Sa'iros change and it becomes smaller, the shir will become smaller. And that's a wild chiddush, because now you're saying the shir wasn't a shir of dinar, it wasn't a shir of silver, it was a shir of Sa'iros, and the Rishonim were all talking about in dinarim, and now all of a sudden you're telling me the shir in Sa'iros. And he's telling me the shir was given in Sa'iros, and therefore, since it was given in Sa'iros, the Sa'iros became smaller, the shir will be smaller. And that's how he answered the problem. Why is everybody taking less? Because the Sa'iros became smaller. Once upon a time, the Sa'iros in time of the Rambam were much bigger. But since the Sa'iros became smaller, and now the shir was given in Sa'iros, so now we give less Pidyon Aben. That's very, very mechudishtik. Right? So we have here an endless amount of rayas to the smaller shir. Again, we have dirhamim, we have dinarim, we have sa'iros, we have charuvim, and they all match the smaller shir. So if they all match the smaller shir, and as we said, by the Sfaradim there was no question about it, they all copied the smaller shir, because they said the shir of dirhamim, and they said the shir of 520 dirhamim, and they always went with an egg being 18 dirham. An egg being 18, or a revius being 27 dirhamim. According to that, that's the smaller shir. And if we go, basically, with that, the egg is 18 dirham, 18 dirham, which would be times, we're going to say that the dirhamim, I can't go into all the details exactly how we get to 2.82. That times 2.82 brings us to a revius being 75 milliliters. According again to the Chazon Ish, it's basically double, 150 milliliters. According to the smaller share, working with the dirhamim and the dinarim, the sa'iros and the charuvim, all of those show us that the shir is a smaller shir of the egg, which is again matching our eggs. It's very close to our eggs. Now, another proof, what is the size of eggs? Did the eggs get smaller or not? So we have eggs that were found in the pyramids, and they were mummified, and they were also smaller. We have eggs from 2,000 years ago. I always forget the name of the city. It's a city in Italy. What? Pompeii? Pompeii. The city that it was basically from a volcano that erupted. It was basically totally covered with lava, and it was basically just, now this lava basically preserved everything. Because it was, what?
Ash. Lava would destroy it. It was ash.
The ash.
Holds everything in place.
The ash of the
volcano.
Of the volcano. Okay, right. So it basically covered the whole thing, and we have eggs from there, which is 2,000 years ago, and the eggs are also smaller. So again, everything matches that the eggs didn't really change, nothing really changed. So we have the eggs, we have dirhamim, we have dinarim, we have sa'iros, we have charuvim, and they all point to the smaller shir, besides which the minhag of all the Sfardim was the smaller shir, because they always quoted the Rambam, and they all used the shir of the Rambam. We have the minhag by the majority, that's for sure in Eretz Yisrael. The majority of the poskim of the Ashkenazim in Eretz Yisrael will also nohig the smaller shir. The Stipler says there were places in Russia that were machmer the bigger shir, but the poskim basically go that the halacha l'maisa is the smaller shir. Somebody wants to be machmir, definitely can use the bigger shir. But somebody asks us what we say the standard, what everything seems to be pointing to, is the smaller shir. The only problem that we didn't answer are the fingers. Our fingers are not 2 centimeters. If anybody here has a 2-finger centimeter, you'll get the booby prize at the end of the class, right? Nobody here has a finger that's 2 centimeters. However, contrary to what we started this year with, where the poskim were assuming that people got smaller from excavations that we have. If anybody ever went to any excavation, the first thing I always tell people, is go look at the doorpost of all these excavations. And you will notice that when you go in, you will have to bend, even if your name is not Amari Stadelmeyer. You will have to bend your head to get in. We have coffins from the time. Now, forget about the bones. The bones, of course, become smaller and everything becomes smaller. But the coffins, right? The coffin didn't become smaller, right? They had, made out of material that doesn't shrink. You have, if it was, wood usually disintegrates, but if it's not wood or, what do you call it, clay or some marble, that becomes smaller, and the coffins were smaller. And it is known that people have, the statistics have shown that people have become taller. So the one way out is to say that once upon a time, people were smaller. That would answer how it would match the problem of the fingers. So basically, what?
We have a more modern proof of that as well. The Korean War was 70-something years ago. So there were one people, and then they separated 7 years ago. The average height difference between a South Korean person who has now modern nutrition and a North Korean person who is still stuck in the Stone Ages is a foot.
Wow.
7 years, a foot, averages.
70.
In just 70 years, the average height of the man went up a foot.
Wow. Amazing. Okay, we'll add that to the list. Okay. So it's very possible that in the time of Chazal, the people were really smaller. What that tells us in Halacha L'Maisa is a different shir, what that does for us. But to answer what it would mean, it would mean that the fingers at the time of Chazal were maybe smaller, and therefore, when they put it into fingers, it really doesn't match our fingers, because our fingers are really bigger. All right, we don't have time now. Probably the next year we'll take all of this into the halacha l'maisa of what does that do for us, for matzah, for wine, for everything else. We'll take that into the next year, and we'll see how much matzah we need to eat for each one of the kazaisim, and how much do we need to eat every time when we need a kazais or baracha achroina. But for that, we're going to have to talk about what a kazayis is in regards to a beitza. That's going to be the next year. Here we defined how much the beitza is, how much the eggs are, how much the fingers are. And if we're working with the fingers again, that's the famous finger. In other words, we're working with the smaller finger. We want to know what a tefach is. We explained at the beginning of the shir, again, we worked backwards and we explained what the size of the finger must have been at the time of Chazal, according to what the size of the eggs were. It's 2 centimeters. That's where you get a tefach being 8 and shloisha tefachim being 24. According to the bigger shir, it's 2.4. and 9.6 is a tefach, and 9.6 times 3 is basically 28.8. That would be the shiur of Shlosha Tvachim, like for Hadassim and Arovos, all these type of things. But next year we'll have to talk about what is the shiur of a kazayis. What does that do? Because we know that's what we want to get to. That's the big thing. How much do I need to eat on the night of Pesach? A kazayis of matzah, kazayis of moror. That we'll get into. Now we'll turn that into the halacha l'maisa of matzah and moror next year.